you what?
Yes, yours.
Thanks very much, the Pipers. Good evening. My name's Mick, and I'm an alcoholic. How's it going? Welcome to, 2018? Aye, 2018 Blue Bonnets in Dumfries. I can't see anybody, which is great, because there's probably tons of yous out there. I'll start the meeting by reading the preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober, help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And see, before I forget, I'm going to ask for Tradition 7, please. Okay. Thanks very much. I came to this fellowship a wee while ago now, and the fact that I'm still here is a bit of a miracle, but I've not had to have a drink since, and that's an even bigger miracle. When I came here, I remember sitting round a table and they said, stick with the winners. And I looked round the room and I thought, they won? Who lost? But I was to learn otherwise, and it's saved my life, not just on that one occasion, but this fellowship saved my life on many, many occasions, in many different circumstances that I could never have predicted. And it's been my experience to go through all sorts of life's ups and downs, because nobody guaranteed me anything when I came in here. The only guarantee they said was if I didn't take the first drink, I couldn't get drunk. And that made sense, you know. Nothing else did. The steps, the people, you know, it was nothing. Meetings, it was very confusing. But thankfully I was pointed in the right direction by people a lot wiser than me. And we've got three speakers up here tonight who are going to share for you. We've got Francie from County Mayo, Kim from Liverpool, and Micheal from Sligo. And I'm pretty sure you didn't come here to listen to me on it, so we're going to just get the speakers on. I'm going to ask Francie from County Mayo.
Hello everyone, my name is Francie and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi Francie.
It's a privilege and an honour to be sitting up or standing up here. And I just maybe want to thank a couple of people, of friends that I've met, and I met them maybe when I was in Stirling, you know, and Peter, the chairman, you know, and Terry. We met when I went. Myself and a friend went to the meeting in Stirling. We went to a meeting the night before. We went to the convention and we met Terry and Peter, and the hospitality and love and care that they gave us. You know, that's why I've come back tonight. You know, come back today, and I want to thank Betty very much for maybe not thanking her very much for me standing up here tonight. You know, but I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, and I really don't know what I'm going to say or how it's going to come out tonight. Like as Mick says, I'm from County Mayo. I was born in a place called Castlebar in 1964, and when we were born, we lived in a tent. You know, I'm a member of the Travelling community. You know, I don't know what words they have for us over here. You know, gypsies or whatever. And that doesn't make me feel any different from anybody in the room. But that's my culture and that's my roots and where I come from. You know, and I come from a family that we were riddled with alcoholism. You you know. Since I've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've watched my mother die with this disease, 3 of my brothers and 3 of my sisters, you know, all died to alcoholism, you know. Some of them choked in their own vomit, and some of them died with cirrhosis of the liver, you know. Another guy died in a car crash, you know. And I come from, there was a big crowd of us, and I'm the youngest, you know. And I also have a brother that I was very close to, you know, who is a chronic alcoholic, and I went to visit him last week. He's in a home with a wet brain due to alcoholism, you know. My sister come back last week. She lives in London. She come back last week, and we both of us went to visit him, and she says, I'm not coming to see him anymore, you know. She couldn't, you know, to look at him and to see the way he was and the way he is, you know. But I'll just maybe tell you a little bit about myself. In the back room, we were told maybe that we can maybe speak for 20 or 25 minutes, you know. So I'll keep an eye on that, or maybe Mick will remind me. But at the age of 11 years of age, you know, as I told you what kind of a home I come from, at the age of 11 I ended up in a home. And I was in the home until from 11, and I left it when I was 15. And maybe just in a few words I can say what happened in the home. There was physical abuse, emotional abuse and sexual abuse, you know. And I was the type of guy that never shared my feelings or talked about my problems to anybody. I kept everything to myself, you know. So I left there at 15. I ended up in the streets of Dublin, you know. That's where I ended up there, and sleeping in doorways, you know. I didn't drink much in pubs, you know. I was a street drinker, you know. I used to beg and borrow and steal or whatever to get money for drink, you know. In and out of mental hospitals, you know, prisons, you know. But in 1986, I'm going to move it on, but just before that, you know, I remember I lived in a place called Dunleary. It was outside Dublin. That's where I was living. And we lived in caravans, and I went away drinking all day, you know. My wife, I come home about 10 o'clock. I was away drinking all day, and I came home at 10 o'clock. And I don't remember any of this. And my wife said I was looking for food. And she says to me, go away here all day and get your food. And I actually, as I gave her a kick in the back. And as a result of that kick in the back that I gave her, she had a miscarriage, you know. And I remember how I felt next morning, you know. If there was a hole in the ground, I wish it would have swallowed me up. And my wife probably was in hospital, and it wasn't the first place that I made a bowl to, you know. What I did, I went and I got a bottle of wine, you know. Looking at it now, I used alcohol as an anaesthetic to kill the pain that went on within, you know. So really, what happened in 1986, I ended up in a place called Sister Concilios in Newry. And I didn't want to stop drinking. Why did I go there? Sister Concilios is a treatment centre. Why did I go there? I went there to get my wife back in my life and to get people off my back. I never had the desire to stop drinking. I could not see life without alcohol, you know. You know, all my life I was full of fear, you know, full of anxiety, you know, always had knots in my stomach, you know, always felt different, you know, never felt a part of, always felt apart from, you know, always uncomfortable in my own skin, you know, never at ease, always had a dis-ease, you know. So I ended up in Concilios in 1986 for someone who didn't want to stay. You know, maybe I was 21 at the time. For someone who didn't want to stay, I went in 86 and I left it in 88. I was 2 years in a mental institution, you know. And I started going to AA, you know, when I was in there, and I didn't want to be going there either, you know. I really was very nervous and really I couldn't talk in front of people, you know. I seen for the first time, I was going for a long time, but the first time I began to be honest and start talking about my life and talking about myself, you know, a big lump come in my throat and I had to stop, you know. So I kept going, and anyways, I kept going to the meetings, you know. And I maybe come to say I wanted what these people had. I really did. I had not, you know. And, you know, that's why I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. That these people, you know, when I come here, as I say, these people showered me with love. You loved me long enough until I was able to love myself, you know. You loved me unconditionally. You didn't expect anything from me, you know. And I could never repay what the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, done for me, you know. But I would, you know, read her book a lot, and I would study it a lot, you know. Today I'm not just happy to be physically away from drink. I want emotional sobriety, you know. Our book says, this whole thing of this program in Alcoholics Anonymous says we are meant to be joyous, happy and free, you know. So am I living free, you know? I love our promises, you know. The first promise says we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. And I remember coming across them and underlining the word new in both of them, you know. Because I can look back through my childhood when I was maybe 6 or 7 years of age, and I knew, looking back in hindsight, and I knew, I always had that feeling there was something wasn't right, you know. I knew there was something wasn't right about me, but could never pinpoint what it was, you know. And why do I say 6 or 7? Was it at the time I started to go to school, or is it the time that maybe that I started to think or to rationalise? I don't know, but I knew there was something that wasn't right about me, you know. And when I did go to school, you know, I couldn't fit in, and I never felt part of, always felt part from. Now that's 6 or 7, you know. Never at ease at that age. Couldn't mix or communicate, couldn't share, couldn't talk, couldn't, you know. But today I can tell you, you know, what I didn't know then. I tell you what I said, there was something wasn't right. Today I know what it is, what it was. I was separated from a power greater than me. Our book talks about it. It says, lack of power is our dilemma, you know. And somewhere earlier in the book it says, you know, it says the main purpose of this book is for me to find a power which will solve my problem. So the purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous and the book is for me to find this power which will solve my problem. And my problem is alcoholism, you know. How can I live at ease and comfortable in my own skin, you know, no matter where I go, whether I'm standing here, whether I'm at home or amongst people? Because all my life, when I was in the company of people, there was like a magnet always pulling me away from them, you know. You know, I read Bill W.'s autobiography recently, you know, and there was 3 maybe things that he seemed to be affected by as well, you know. He's a shyness, awkwardness, and inferior, you know, and them things had a big effect in my life, you know. And I don't believe I felt that way because of my culture, where I come from, because I hear people who didn't come from that, where I come from, feel the same way, you know. And I hear people saying, you know, they come from homes that there was a lot of love and a lot of care. Other people comes from the opposite, and they felt the same way. you know. I'm just so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, what it has done for me and what it has done for my family. All my life, as I say, I remember once, so what I used to do to get money for drink. So Sunday mornings, I used to be standing at the door of a chapel with my hand out begging for money for drink, That's humiliation, and that's the things that I done for drink. I went to any lengths to get drink so that I could change the way I felt. I didn't know anything about the disease of alcoholism. I used to think I was an evil and a bad person for the way I lived and the things I done. I bring a lot of hurt and a lot of pain to people's lives. Our book talks about it. We go through people's lives like a tornado going through people's lives, and that's what I did. My family, at the end of my drinking, when I say in 1986, they put me on a train, and they says, go to Newry and don't come back. They wiped their hands off me, and that's the way the disease of alcoholism left me. It left me alone, that nobody didn't want to have anything to do with me, But as I say, I've come here, and I wanted what these people had, and I've got it, And all I wanted was to be myself, to be at ease in my own, to be comfortable in my own skin. And it has happened. He says, if I do these simple things, and I really wanted what the people had, I'm maybe going to finish very shortly. The last time I was in Dumfries was in 1981. And the reason I was in Dumfries in 1981, we were coming from Ireland over to Stranraer. And I don't know if I think the trains were on strike at the time, and we tried to steal a car. And we were arrested. We were arrested, and I was put into Chesterfield, I think you call it. Chesterfield prison here in this town. And I was 3 weeks in it. I was into the three guys that's with me this weekend. I was here before for 3 weeks, but I never got to walk around it. And I've got to walk around it. It's a lovely place. But it wasn't so lovely in 1981. But it's different now. But listen, I don't know. If there's something I want to say, it has left my mind. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe for me right to say it. But Alcoholics Anonymous has saved my life. And I'll just say, as I say, I ended up in the streets of Dublin and begging, and I'm going to shut up shortly. I know I'm going to get the 2-minute signal, but I'm going to shut up. But in the 6th of June, gone there, I was able to go to Akron, Ohio, and go to where one of our co-founders' house, Bob's. And after Bob's house, we went to the gatehouse where Bill met Bob, where Henrietta Severn and Bill and Bob together, And then after that, we went to Bill D's grave, Bill Dotson's grave, And then to where Sister Ignatius and Dr. Bob's work in St. Thomas Hospital in Akron, It was, and I'll just, I went to a meeting, and a girl called Gail talked about. She was given a history about the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she talked about the big book and how it came about and the struggles and one thing and another. And after she was finished, there was a guy beside me from where I lived. I just broke into screeching, and the reason why I screeched was because I told you at the beginning, that alcoholism played a big part in our family, And I was so grateful, I was full of gratitude for what I had, that I was sober, and also that it has helped my family, my wife and my children, And not that my children wouldn't have been, didn't grow up the same way that I was growing up, they got the education, and they're able to go to work and do the things that, you know, other normal people do. You know, we didn't get that opportunity. I went to school when I was in third P3. I finished in you know, P7. I never went on to secondary school, you know. But I taught myself, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know words. I got a dictionary, you know. Anything I didn't know, I went to the dictionary. I would ask my sponsor, you know. I wanted to know about this thing, you know, how it works. You know, what does this mean? What does that mean? You know, I always ask questions, you know, because I seen what the people had in here, and I wanted it. And our book says, and I'll shut up at this, you know, for someone, you know, our book says, and it's read out in chapter 5 all the time. It says, if you want what we have, you know, if I say, yes, I want what you have, well, then it says, are you willing to go to any lengths to get it? And I say, yes, I am. Well, then it says, are you ready to take certain steps? You know, and I was ready to take certain steps, you know. And listen, I don't know how I sounded up here tonight, but Alcoholics Anonymous, I could never repay what it has done for me, you know. You know, I can't, you know, today I don't bottle up stuff. I have people who I can talk to, you know. I have shared myself with maybe 4 or 5 people. I shared myself with my sponsor, who's sitting down there, and I was able to share myself people who I've took through the program. I have no skeletons in my cupboard, you know. I have no guilt or shame about my past. I have found a loving God in Alcoholics Anonymous who forgives me. You know, I accept me, warts and all. You know, and I remember, I'll just maybe finish in this, you know. All my life, I seek to prove it. You know, I wanted people to accept me. You know, I wanted people to love me. You know, and really what it's like, you know, putting the cart before the horse. You know, and me as a travelling person should know that you put the horse before the cart, you know. But what I mean by that is, I was looking for other people to approve of me, other people to love me, other people to accept me when I didn't do it for myself, you know. And today I accept me, warts and all. Thank you.
Thanks, Francie. Thanks very much, Francie. Francie talked about the places he'd been in, and you know, when I get sober, you couldn't take me at the end of the street, never mind any further, you know, and I could tell you every crack in the pavement of where I lived. I'm from a wee place called Oban, which has got a convention in February if you're not doing anything. And I could tell you every crack in the street, and I couldn't look you straight in the eye. And when I came in, that was beyond my wildest dreams to be able to do that. It's since taken me to... I've never been to County Mayo, right enough. That's a yet. I'll maybe go for a meeting one night. But our next speaker is from somewhere I have been to, and I can't really understand them, which is a bit... She's from Liverpool. All joking aside, our next speaker is Kim from Liverpool.
Thanks everybody, my name's Kim and I'm a very grateful and nervous alcoholic.
Hi Kim.
And I'm originally from a little place, a peninsula called the Wirral, although I'm married to a Scouser, so I now live in Liverpool and I call that my home. And as a child, I was maladjusted to life. That sounds so much better than dysfunctional, doesn't it? I never knew what to wear, who to speak to, how to act. Shy, timid. I would be the person at the family do's who was under the tablecloth, hoping nobody would see me and ask me to get up and dance with them like all the grannies and the aunties did. So I was terribly shy, terribly withdrawn, and that carried all the way through my childhood. And I didn't know till I come to this fellowship that really I was full of self. And I didn't have a drink until I was 17. And at the age of 17, I picked up my first drink, which was with my cousin. And her mum had said we could have a glass of sherry each. Her mum was far more outgoing than my parents ever were. And the glass of sherry became the whole bottle. And then, because I looked the oldest, we went the off-licence and we bought a bottle of Cinzano Rosso, which I've never drunk since. She was sick all over somebody's gravestone in a graveyard. I blacked out, came to and vomited all over her mum's carpet in the dining room and swore I wouldn't do it again. And yet every time I went out, I got drunk, I usually vomited, I blacked out, and I swore I'd never do it again. And that pattern of drinking carried all the way through my drinking career. And I didn't drink daily at first. It was interspersed with my dad not allowing me to drink and stuff like that. And at the age of 19, I became pregnant and I got married to my husband. And we had 3 daughters in 5 years. But at 17, my mum died suddenly due to the effects of this illness. And my dad remarried after 11 months to a woman who was less than kind to us children that were left. And I swore I would not do that to my children. If I ever had children, I would bring them up, I would be the perfect mother, the little house on the prairie with the white picket fence, and everybody sits around the dining table saying, "Hi, John boy," and all the rest of it. And that didn't happen. That was not the pattern of my parenthood, although that was how I intended it to be. And I learned through this fellowship that my best intentions usually got me drunk. So I had the 3 girls within 5 years, and I drank through the pregnancies because my youngest will be my youngest is 35 years old, so 35 years ago it wasn't really frowned on to drink during pregnancy, although it was frowned on to be absolutely rocking up the road with a big belly, not knowing where you were going. And I thought I was going to be the perfect mum. I thought I was going to bring these kids up to be well-balanced young women, and I was going to do the best for them. And it never seemed to happen. We didn't have much money when the kids were little, so we would make homebrew. And while my husband was at work, I'd be drinking the homebrew, and it wasn't even fermented. So that gives you the idea that I never actually drank for the taste. I always drank for the effect, and the effect was oblivion, to shut me head off, to stop me thinking, to stop me feeling, to stop me overreacting, to stop me being out of step with life, because I just didn't know how to work. And I blagged it a lot, and I kidded a lot of people, and I put the brave face on, and to the outside world, I probably looked like, Mary Baker. But I wasn't. Inside I was dying, I was crucified, I was crippled with fear all the time. I would not take my children on a foreign holiday because I was petrified the plane would crash and it would be my fault because I'm so important. And that was the sort of train of thought that I had all the time, going round and round, 24/7 in my head. And at the age of 32, all this stuff was coming to a head, and I decided the reason I felt like I did was because I was married to the wrong man. So I divorced him, not thinking about my daughters, I divorced him. And I went on what I can only describe as my mis-teenage years drinking spree, with little consideration for what my children were doing at home while I was out partying and doing whatever else I was doing, and sometimes not coming home. And leaving my kids with my sister, who luckily enough looked after them for me and helped raise them with me. And that carried on. My drinking went on for 32 years. I came to this fellowship when I was 49. And it wasn't anything big that brought me to the fellowship. I'd seen my mother die this illness, and I thought, that's not going to happen to me. And then my stepmother died of this illness horrifically by pulling a deep fat fryer over herself when she was drunk. And my father looked like he was going to be charged with a murder because he couldn't remember when she last was awake. And then my father died of this illness in 2003. And that wasn't me. I was not going to be that parent. I was going to be, Miss Mary Baker, Little House on the Prairie woman. And then in March 2008, by this time all my kids had left home, they were living independently. I went to my nephew's 18th party. My best intentions were, I was doing the designated driver that night. And that went to, well, I'll take the car to the do and I'll leave it there if I want to drink. And then it went to, well, I'll take the car to my brother's and have a drink and go in the taxi there and pick the car up the next day too. I may as well just start drinking now. And I got very drunk and I came to in the toilets after blacking out yet again with my children looking for me. And they got me out of the club. The club was shut, they were clearing up, but Kim had come to and she needed more drink. And there were empty and half-empty glasses on the table. Whatever was in them, I didn't know, but Kim wanted them and was minesweeping as she was being dragged out. And the next day, my youngest phoned me up and she said, "Are you all right, Mum?" And I said, "Oh, I got a bit tipsy last night, sorry about that, love." And she said to me, "It's okay, Mum, you were a funny drunk." And I didn't hear the word funny that day, I heard drunk. And I thought, that's not the person I was going to be. That's not how I was going to bring my kids up. I was going to be a responsible woman for my 3 beautiful daughters, and that's not what was happening. So I went to speak to a colleague of mine, because fortunately, God works in very mysterious ways. For many years prior to that, for about 15 years prior to that, I'd been working as a drug and alcohol substance misuse practitioner, helping people get well. And all the time it was me that needed to get well. But through that work, I bumped into somebody who's been in this fellowship for about 38 years, and he took me to my first meeting. And I walked into my first meeting, which was on the Wirral, ironically at the place where I worked and where I'd gone to church and Girl Guides and stuff like that. And I felt that the hole in my soul started to fill up. I felt a sense of hope. And I know today, through doing the readings and through being in meetings and that was my first spiritual experience. And I've had quite a few of them since I come into the fellowship. And I kept coming back, and people give me phone numbers. I got myself a sponsor, and I went through the programme with her. And I kept coming back, and I kept listening, and I kept looking at the people who had long-term sobriety and thinking, that's what I want. That's where I need to be. I need to follow what they're doing. And I stayed away from the people who were bouncing in and out. Not that they didn't have messages to give me, because they had very strong messages to give me, but I was so fearful of going out and not coming back. And today, I am still fearful of going out and not coming back. I never want to take another drink again. But I know that's contingent on what I do every 24 hours. I usually try and start my day off with a little bit of quiet time, meditation, prayer, reading. And I try and be the best person that I can on any given day. And some days, within 10 minutes of walking out the door with the dogs for the first walk of the day, I take my life and my will back. And I have to put the handbrake on, and I have to remember, who's the person I want to be today? I don't want to be the old me who was full of fear, full of insecurities, so afraid of life and of living that I had to drink on it. My drinking at the end, before I came in, my children didn't know how much I was drinking because they weren't living at home. But I laugh when I say this, because I was a healthy alcoholic. I went to the gym. But on my way to the gym, I'd buy a half or a quarter bottle of vodka, whatever I could afford. And I'd empty it into 2 bottles of Diet Coke, because that's healthy. And I'd go to the gym. The bottle of vodka would go in the bin at the gym. That's normal drinking, isn't it? And I'd be on the treadmill at the gym, working up a sweat, not with my bottle of Diet Coke and vodka. And then I'd go home, and I'd have a bottle of wine at least with dinner. And then I'd have my other bottle of Diet Coke because I was thirsty. And then at some point during the night, I'd wake up on the settee after blacking out. And I usually counted myself fortunate if I didn't wake up with the laptop on me and he's still plugged into the mains and a glass dripping all over the place. So that was the end of my drinking. Every night after work, I'd be at it. And every night when I got to bed, feeling like crap, I'd say, I'm not doing that tomorrow. And every morning I'd get up feeling like crap and I'd be dry retching in the toilets at work, denying how much I was drinking, saying I had a gastric stomach and all the rest of it, and I'd say, I'm not going to do that today. By lunchtime I'd be thinking, how can I get out and get a couple of bottles? So I didn't have to wait 5 minutes in a queue on my way home to get another bottle. I was robbing pizza to pay Paul. The income I had was not sufficient for the amount of alcohol and the other materialistic things I was fixing myself with. So I would use my grandmother's pension money every week and then have to pay it back at the end of the month. And then I wouldn't have enough money to live for the rest of the month, so I'd use my grandma's pension money, and then come the loan and the credit card and the consolidation. So materialistically, externally, my life was very unmanageable at the end of my drinking. But internally was what crucified me. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I hated the sight of my face. My eyes were dead and I felt lower than low, and I thought I had a couple of choices. One was to kill myself, and I didn't have the bottle to do that, and I didn't want to do that to my daughters. Although I did research ways to do it so that nobody would know I'd done it, so that nobody would know I'd killed myself, so it wouldn't upset them as much when I died. And the other way was to stop drinking, and that wasn't going to happen because I tried it for a few weeks at a time and it just didn't last. Or to become a 24/7 drinker, and the most attractive option on that day before I came to AA was to become the 24/7 drinker. And something somewhere told me that I needed to get help. And I had the incident where I had the last public drunk on the 1st of March 2008, and I came to the fellowship on the 17th of March 2008, and I haven't wanted or needed a drink since then. But that doesn't mean to say I've never thought of it. You know, sometimes you go past a pub beer garden and you see them with the little glasses of wine taking the little sips, and I think, oh, that looks nice. I never went for a drink in my life, and from that first thought I go straight to drunk. So I know I'm not immune from a drink. If I decide to step away from this fellowship, which has given me a life beyond my wildest dreams, to step away from doing service, because that's what I'm told will help keep me sober. Nothing so much secures immunity from the first drink or something like that, isn't it, than working with others. So I do my service, I have a mother group, I do sponsorship, and I do what I've heard has been suggested so many times by people who've been around many, many years. And I try and keep one foot in front of the other some days, and some days it's like swimming through porridge. But it's never a bad day if I don't pick a drink up. You know, my life has got so much meaning now. I'm married to the most fantastic man. There was a husband in between, the first husband actually, but I won't go into that. So I'm not Virgin Mary, don't worry. My third husband, who's been in this fellowship a lot longer than me. And the good thing about being married to somebody who's also in the fellowship is they know when you're off beam. And the bad thing about being married to somebody who's also in the fellowship is they know when you're off beam. So I don't get away with anything. But, you know, I, for years, wondered would I ever get a grandchild. And in 2014, I got my first grandchild, closely followed by another 9. So we now have 10 grandchildren between us, 9 children, and isn't it great? You know, in return for a bottle and a hangover, I have been given the keys of the kingdom. You know, I come to conventions when I can. I love the Cyprus Convention. I love the fellowship. I love going into a room where even if I don't know anyone, I know everyone. You know, I never feel alone in this fellowship unless I choose to make myself feel alone, you know. I try and hold out the hand of AA friendship to everybody. I try and greet people when they come into my mother group. I've not seen them before. Make sure they feel welcome. And as I say, I do my service, I do what's suggested. I stand up here shaking like a leaf. Wishing I hadn't come to this convention this year, but being so thoroughly grateful for having the opportunity to do this. And at the end of my drinking, my children didn't know how much I was drinking, and I told them that I was going to AA meetings, and they thought that was for my job. And they said, "But Mum, you're not like Grandad, you're not like the stepmother, you're not like your mum, you're not like me dad, you're not like so-and-so." And I'm not like any of them, but I am an alcoholic. You know, my drinking was never normal, it was never controlled, and it never will be. I suffer from alcoholism, not wasn't. And my intention and my hope for the future is that everybody in this room remains well, remains sober, and that we all come back a day at a time for the rest of our lives. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kim. Kim spoke about the gym. I don't go to the gym. Which is kind of obvious. Looks like hard work. But I'll tell you something about the gym. I was out in a van one day at work with a guy I was working with, and he's not one of us, right? So, is it normies or something? I don't know. I had a pal in the fellowship, we called them normies. We used to have conversations about it quite a lot. He'd say, "What would the normies do here, Mick?" I'd say, "I don't know, because I'm not a normie." But anyway, my mate's a normie, and I said something about going to a meeting. He says, "You've not had a drink for years, Mick." I says, "No, that's right, aye." He says, "You still go to meetings?" I says, "Aye." He says, "What for?" Which is quite a common question for non-alcoholics to ask you, right? Because I don't think they get it. But then they don't need to get it. I said, "Well, you go to the gym, mate. He's dead fit. He's got like muscles and all that. He looks really weird. I sit and poke him and tell him he's lumpy." So that's not normal. I get thrown out of a pub in the island of Mull one time with a guy called John Paul Sigmarsson. He was the strongest man in the world. He picked me up with one hand and flung me across the street into a puddle. And all I said to him was he was lumpy. But anyway, that's... But I says to my mate, I says, "You go to the gym, ma?" He says, "Aye." I says, "Why do you go to the gym?" He says, "Because it keeps me fit." I says, "Well, I go to meetings because it keeps me fit in the way that I want to be." And he came and I went, "Oh, right, that makes sense." He's never asked me since. I don't think he wants to go to a meeting or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? He's not really that way inclined. But anyway, that reminded me of that. Kim, thanks very much. And thanks for coming all the way from Bonnets, Liverpool, and sharing with us. Our final speaker tonight is also called, well, he's called Micheal. Might get called Mick, I don't know. But he's Micheal, and he's from Sligo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Micheal, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic.
Micheal.
And I'm a bag of nerves. I was at the Early Birds meeting last night, and Tommy asked me, he said, "Will you do the chair or a share at the meeting?" And I said I would. So that's why I'm here. What do I talk about? I talk about the only thing I'm qualified to talk about, me. I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on the 6th of June, 1983. I was helpless, hopeless, homeless, and I was to discover powerless. Yeah. I had my first drink at 15, which is just over 50 years ago, and it promised me everything. I heard a Scotchman describe it at a meeting in Sligo one night. He said before he ever took a drink, he said, "I felt like a Wayne." I was to find out what a Wayne is. A Wayne is a child in Scotland. I didn't know that. But that's what he said. He said, "I felt like a Wayne." And he said, "When I took a drink, I felt like John Wayne." That's exactly. I had my first drink out of curiosity. I hadn't a notion what it was going to do for me. And when I did drink it, it tasted dreadful. And it's ironic to think, I've tasted many things that were dreadful. Porridge as a child, I hated it. Broccoli, hated it. Never went back looking for it ever again. Tomatoes, especially with the skin on, hate them. Never went back looking for them again. This alcohol made me dry reach. And I went back for more. Why? Because it made me feel a lot better, you know. That's why I drank. First one out of curiosity. Second one, I certainly want another one. Why? Because of the way it made me feel. But it tastes dreadful. I don't care. The feeling I get is worth it. Isn't that ironic? Like, you know, that was my first drink. My last drink, I was left, as I said, helpless, hopeless, homeless, and powerless. I felt that bad about myself. I had tried to commit suicide in my early 20s. Now, I didn't try to commit suicide because I was mentally deranged. I tried to commit suicide because of the way I felt. I felt absolutely dreadful about the person that I had become. The thoughts that went round in my head on a constant day were, I was just useless as a son. I was useless as a brother. I was useless as a husband. And I was useless as a father. Dreadful things to be thinking the whole time. And I just thought to myself, well, the only solution to this is to just do myself in. And I done it. I tried it. I threw myself out of a car coming in from a little place called Strand Hill in County Sligo. And the reason I'd done that is I've just explained to you how I felt. Can you imagine the abject failure I felt when I woke up in Sligo General Hospital and I hadn't succeeded in doing what I wanted to do? And that was end the pain and the suffering. I'm not talking about physical pain. I'm talking about that mental torture that keeps you awake at night. Did you ever get into bed at night physically exhausted and not sleep a wink? Dreadful, isn't it? I don't care how many memory foam mattresses you have or memory foam pillows. If your head is not right, you won't sleep. And I heard a great line at a convention in Birmingham one time. And the man said, he says, the softest pillow an alcoholic can lay his or her head on is a clear conscience. I didn't realise I hadn't got one. So as I say, I came to my first meeting on the 6th of June 1983 and I was in some state. But I got a little spark of hope at that first meeting. And that's what the people said. They said, keep coming back, which was unusual, like, you know, because I think there was something like 96 pubs in Sligo and 94 of them says, don't ever come back. Yeah. But thanks be to God I did keep coming back, like, you know, because I can look back now and see it was a very significant, important date in my life, like, you know. It was the beginning of a new life for me. I didn't think it at the time because I was in an awful state. The wife had thrown me out. My daughter was only 3 at the time, like, you know what I mean, so I didn't think she remembered stuff like that, but she did. And I've just recently got back in contact with her after a number of years, like, you know. So this disease, I do smile when I heard the preamble read out of the meeting. It says, there are no dues or fees for AA membership. It's the most expensive club I've ever joined, you know. It nearly took my life, you know. That's some price to pay. But as I say, I went to meetings early on, and you know what it's like early in recovery. Anyone here at the convention for the first time? Well, I know there's 4 people here at the first time of their convention. Mal and Manus that travelled over with me, and there are 2 ladies from Camden at their first Dumfries convention, so I hope you have a wonderful time, you know. They said that make reference to them and call them the Double D, and that's because their names are Deirdre and Dawn, you know. But getting back to, you know, early in recovery, like, I'm going to meetings on a regular basis because people suggest it. Get to plenty of meetings. They didn't mention 90 meetings in 90 days. They just said get to plenty of meetings. There was weeks I went to 10 meetings in the week and my head fried. There's nothing worse than that, is there? People say, how many meetings do you go? I'm going to 10 meetings and my head I'm still demented. You know what I mean? I heard people talking about being happy, joyous and free. I was tormented. Couldn't sleep at night, pacing the room, me head in a knot. And I was living on my own, into the bed at about 11 o'clock, and by 10 past 11 the bed is full. You know, up here. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, the wife, the child, brothers, barmen. Oh, just, how do you sleep with that kind of stuff? Just absolute torment. So I'm at a convention in the Silver Swan Hotel in Sligo in February 1984, and there was a man doing what I'm doing now, sharing. I would have stood in snow listening to him, because he talked about his life and he said it was dreadful. I'm just going to sum it up. He said it was dreadful. He got hold of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he is now able to deal with life on life's terms. And it says that in our big book. It says that if you want what we have, and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. All I was doing was going to meetings. So I asked this man, I says, I'd like to have a chat with you after that. And he says, certainly, we'll go upstairs. And on the way up the stairs, he said to me, he says, how long are you around? I said, 10 months. Very good. He said, what are you doing with the programme? I said, I'm going to 10 meetings a week. He said, I didn't ask you how many meetings you're going to. He said, I asked you what you're doing with the programme. You know? And I didn't know what the programme was. I thought the programme was go to plenty of meetings. And I didn't drink. But I wasn't what these people were talking about, happy, joyous and free. I was tormented. And you know what it's like going to a meeting when you're tormented? Everyone at the meeting is pain, aren't they? You wonder, is he ever going to shut up? I hope she doesn't talk about the cat tonight. You know what I mean? Your head in a knot. And then when they ask you to share, they say, yeah, my name is Micheal. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I'm delighted to be here tonight. Yeah. And anything but that. You know what I mean? But this man was to point out to me, he just asked me one simple question. He says, Micheal, are you powerless over alcohol? And he said, before you answer that question, he said, I want you to ask yourself a simple question and be honest with yourself. He says, there are only two alternatives to it. He says, you are powerless over it or you're not. He says, there's no ifs, buts or anything in between. You know what I thought to myself? I said, I don't know. Typical alcoholic. Unbelievable. Sitting on the fence, it's called. You know. But I did. I took an honest look at me drinking. And my suicide attempt, where did that come out of? Because of me drinking. Why did the wife throw me out of the house? Not because of BO or smelling me feet. She threw me out of the house because she couldn't cope with me drinking. I had become a thief, a cheat and a liar. She couldn't leave down her purse or I'd empty it. She couldn't leave the child's piggy bank or I'd tamper with that. And I didn't steal money for to buy a shirt or to buy a pair of shoes. I stole that money for to get drink. And that's, you're brought to some state like that. Is there any wonder I tried to commit suicide? How do you live with yourself when you've done that? And I'm not going to elaborate on an awful lot of other stuff I've done. You know. So here was this man confronting me with this question, am I powerless over alcohol? Yes, I am powerless over alcohol. How do I know that? Because I took an honest look at my drinking. Has it enhanced my life? Has it made me a better son, a better brother, a better husband, a better father, a better human being? No, it hadn't. So am I powerless over alcohol? Yeah. And then he pointed out, he said, well, now that you've come to the conclusion that you're powerless over alcohol, he said, what do you think you need? I said, I don't know. He says, common sense will tell you that if you're powerless over something, then what you need is something that's more powerful than what you're powerless over. Because if you don't get something more powerful than what you're powerless over, what you're powerless over will keep bringing you back. I had to go home and write that down. But I was to see the significance of it, like, you know what I mean? Because I had an awful time with God. And I said to him, I said, I don't believe in God. He said, I never mentioned God. And he says, neither does the second step. The second step makes a suggestion. It says, came to believe that a power greater than you could restore you to sanity. And he says, you've been 10 months without a drink. And you're going to meetings. And he says, you've never had 10 months away from drink ever before. So he said, if that's not a power greater than you, he said, I don't know what is. So that was my higher power for a while, the group. Until I discovered, see, when you wake up at 3:30 in the morning and your head is demented, and your higher power doesn't open till 8:30 that night. I have to have a power in my life 24/7. You know what I mean? That I can contact. And I need to contact him on a regular basis, you know. And as Mick made reference to there earlier on about the chap asking him, why does he still go to meetings? That's why I still go to meetings. I go to meetings on a very regular basis. Why? Because I find it's a sense of gratitude to try and repay Alcoholics Anonymous what it has given me. Because it has given me vastly more than the ability to stay away from one drink one day at a time. It's given me the ability to become the person I was meant to become. And who's that? That's me. I'm very comfortable sat here tonight. standing here tonight. I was a little nervous. That's natural. There's something wrong if you're not nervous, standing up in front of a load of people and talking about yourself. But this program has given me the ability to be who I'm meant to be today, you know what I mean? And that was through the practicing of the 12 steps. And that's exactly what I try to do. And that's what this man introduced me to, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first 2 steps were only, I had to take an honest look at myself, a bit of reflection. But the third one was the one that I start off with the action. And ironically, I done that with a wee Scotchman. Scotch Pat is his name, was his name. He lived in Luton in Bedfordshire. And I went out to him one night with me head in a knot. I said, I'm living with 6 alcoholics. I said, 3 practicing and 3 going to meetings. He said, I have a solution for your problem, Michael. I said, what is it? He says, move out. I didn't move out. Why? Because I was afraid to. I didn't want to live on my own. So I thought to myself, well, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And he said, well, don't be whining in my ear that that's causing you grievous harm. He said, I've given you the solution and you won't do it. So I said, simple as. And he asked me, he says, have you done the 3rd step the way it suggests in the big book? I says, 3rd step? I said, I'm down at the 11th. He said, did you do the 3rd step the way it suggests in the big book? I said, no, I didn't. Well, he says, we'll do that now. And that's exactly what I done. You know how self-conscious the alcoholic is? Can you imagine getting down on your knees with someone, you're just after a meeting, and he's sitting in the front, we're in the front room, and the curtains are pulled back. And I'm thinking, if anyone walks by and sees me on my, see how you're self-conscious? Not a person in Luton knew me at that time. And I'm worried about these people walking by seeing me, you know. But I uttered that little 3rd step prayer, you know what I mean? And that was the beginning of it for me. The beginning of the action, where it says, God, I offer myself to you to do with me as you will. Release me from the bondage of self, that I may better do your will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those of your love, mercy, and way of life. And may I, the one I leave out is, may I do your will always. I don't do it always. Because if I could do God's will always, I wouldn't need to come back to meetings. I'd be above in Glasgow tonight signing copies of the book How to Do It Right by Micheal. And I certainly haven't gotten that far yet, you know. And then he pointed out to me, he said, now find out why you're so restless, irritable and discontent. And that was what the 4th step was. I found out what was wrong with me in the 4th step. Yeah. And when I found out what was wrong with me in the 4th step, how do I come to terms with that? Sit down with another person. But it says admit to God, to yourself and to another human being. It's very easy to talk to God when you're on your own. He's not there beside you. See, when you sit down with another human being and look them in the eye and tell them all that you've gathered together in your step 4, it's a pretty humbling and humiliating experience, you know. And I was to find out what my defects of character were. I shared with a woman in Sligo one time, Scotch Ellen was her name. And I said to her, I'd love to be rid of me defects of character. You know what she said to me? She says, you're a defect looking for a character. Which was true. See, I didn't know what a defect of character was. But I was to find out what they were. And admit them then. So how do I get rid of them? Step 6. Step 6 suggests that we become entirely willing to have God remove these defects of character. I was reading all the books under the sun to try and remove me defects of character. I was cursed with negative thinking. So I bought a book one time called The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. A fantastic book if you're in a good frame of mind. If your head is in a knot, don't open it. You know? So step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. I was a wee bit perplexed with that because I said, God, I says, I'm only after finding out now that I have defects, and now I have shortcomings. So I didn't know what's the difference between a defect and a shortcoming. I met some philosophers in Alcoholics Anonymous who told me, and I thought it was a profound statement. It says, a defect is doing something you shouldn't be doing, and a shortcoming is not doing something you should be doing. And I thought that was brilliant. I wrote that down also. And I couldn't wait to get to another meeting to say that, because I thought people would think, that man is just profound. I was to discover that is a load of rubbish. A defect is something I'm doing that I have no power over. Because that's why step 6 says I become entirely willing to have God remove the defect. not me. And that's why I try and do it in step 7, where I humbly ask him to remove my shortcomings. And I read a little book written by a chap called Chuck C., who was a good friend of Bill W.'s. And he had the same question for Bill that I would have had. And he says, what's the difference between a defect and a shortcoming, Bill? And Bill looked at him and he said, there's no difference, Chuck. He says, I just didn't want to use the same word twice. And the amount of arguments I had in Sligo with alcoholics with the difference between a defect and a shortcoming, unbelievable. Step 8, what does step 8 ask me to do? It asked me to make a list of the people I had harmed. Why? Because I found it very hard to walk down the streets of Sligo and meet the people that I had hurt and caused awful pain to. And I was estranged from my wife and found it awful difficult to make approaches there too, like, you know what I mean? She was so hurt. And I'm not talking about being physically hurt, I'm talking about being emotionally hurt. The woman was just distraught. She could not understand what had become of the man that she married. Like, you know what I mean? A few short years beforehand. Like, you're just a complete stranger, she'd said to me. Like, you know what I mean? And she says, please don't ever say you're sorry again. I'm sick listening to it. So these are the people. I gave my dad an awful hard time, and he was on the list. But he was dead and gone, so how do you make amends to someone that's dead and gone? I done the next best thing. It was suggested that I write a letter. And everything I'd like to say to him, write it in that letter. And if I wanted to bring it a step further, go to the cemetery and read it out. I've done that. I can sleep contentedly at night now. I no longer get the hair standing up in the back of my head or twisting and turning in the bed at night. Why? Because of step 8. Step 8 has released me from the guilt and shame that it tells me about in the promises, that we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. I have a very checkered past. I've only skimmed over it here tonight with you. I had a very checkered past that kept me awake many, many nights. Like, you know what I mean? And this programme has given me the ability to come to terms with that. And that was steps 8 and 9. Steps 10, 11 and 12 are my maintenance steps. So step 10, continue to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. I do that. Not promptly. You know, I'm a human being. You know, I'm not a saint. This thing on the top of my head is a bald spot. It's not a halo. You know, these things in my back are shoulder blades. They're not wings. You know, and it's nice to be frivolous. See, when I came into this first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was unable to speak like I'm speaking tonight. The freedom I have got in Alcoholics Anonymous is just indescribable. The two speakers before me spoke about the release they have got, not only from this disease of alcoholism, but the ability to live a day at a time. And that's been directly attributed to the programme of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was so privileged to be pointed in the direction of by that man from the Lisburn Road in Belfast, and his name was Ernie C., who was a tremendous help to me in my early recovery. You know. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation. I thought that, you know, I'd have to be a guru for the meditate. Not at all. I got it simplified in Alcoholics Anonymous. Prayer is when you talk to God. Meditation is when you listen to Him. It's simple. Like, you know what I mean? I was to find out what it is to pray. I thought prayers were something you utter with your mouth. Not at all. I have learned that a prayer is something that I try and do and try and aspire to, particularly our serenity prayer. So what am I asking God for? I'm asking God, will you grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change? There are an awful lot of things I can't change, particularly people, places and things. I need to ask God to give me the serenity to accept those people, places and things in my life. And I found that very difficult. I found it very difficult to accept the fact that my wife was gone out of my life. I found it very difficult to accept the fact that my daughter was gone out of my life. She's now 39 years of age and I've just recently made contact with her again after 18 years. And it's just wonderful. Like, you know, I'm so proud to be standing here tonight in Dumfries. I came to my first meeting in Dumfries in 1984 and I had such an experience. It was just absolutely wonderful, especially when they started waving that white handkerchief. I was just blown away. I'm getting a lump in my throat thinking about it. I'm going home on the ferry and I'm writing in a wee diary. I'm saying I'm after having the most wonderful experience of my life. And I said, I'm never going to miss Dumfries ever again. I didn't get back for 16 years. Typical alcoholic. And to finish up, step 12, having had a spiritual awakening There's nothing ambiguous about that. It doesn't say you might have, or there's a possibility, or if you're the right size or the right colour, if you're a pledge yourself right, you might have one. It says straight, categorically, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. What does it ask you to do? To try and carry this message to the still suffering alcoholic. I thought the still suffering alcoholic was the man and woman out there still drinking. Not at all. The person sat beside you tonight could be a suffering alcoholic. You know what I mean? And what do I carry? I carry the message that was carried to me. That if I practice these principles in all my affairs, it will not remove the pain and heartache that's in my life. But what it does is give me the strength to cope with the pain and heartache that's in my life. I'm very grateful to be here tonight. I hope that each and every one of you have a wonderful weekend, and I'm certainly going to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Micheal. Thank you. I too. I was in here. I was in the fellowship for a number of years, and went through the programme and was thinking I was doing great and all that stuff, and got to a place where I didn't do the programme, and I stopped practising everything I was taught, and it took me to a place I wouldn't ever want to go again. And Micheal's share there for me just expressed the importance of that. How it works doesn't say that you go about everything else in your life telling folk you're sober. It says something quite different. And thankfully, this alcoholic was able to find that again and put my life back together. And I didn't take a drink. You don't need to take a drink. It's been my experience. No, I didn't need to take a drink to be no well. Stark raving sober, I think somebody called it. But Micheal, thanks very much. That was absolutely wonderful. We're just about the end. You can nearly get the jigging starting in a wee minute. So, just remains for me. Listen, this has been great, by the way. See, sitting up here, it looks great. You can't take photos and all that, right? But I wish I could, because you look magic. It really is. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful weekend. And I hope you do come back to Dumfries, because it's one of those that's kind of iconic, isn't it? I remember being at the World Convention in Canada and meeting people from, I can't mind, Hawaii or someplace, and they'd heard of the Blue Bonnets. That way, and you're like, wow, man, that's magic. They've heard their tune in Scotland. I was really chuffed. They asked me if I knew somebody called Jim. I says, no, I told you before, I don't go to the gym. No, but seriously. I'd just like to wish everybody have a wonderful weekend. And as Micheal touched on as well, person suffering could be sitting right beside you and they might not necessarily have a half bottle in their bag. I'd just like you to thank the three speakers again, please. Micheal, Kim and Francie. And it just remains for me to ask you to please be upstanding and help me close the meeting with a serenity prayer. Using the God of your understanding, and may He go with you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Fabulous. Well done, Kim.
That was amazing.
Relax now.
Yeah.
Francie, well done. Thanks,
Well done, boys.
Thanks a lot.
That's over.
Kim, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Take that one off the list.
Take it off the list.